So we're going to create a couple of scenes today and tie them all together. There's actually, if anyone's gotten into like After Effects, especially, there's this idea of pre-composing sequences so that you can put them other places, and you can do the same thing in two different ways in Unreal. So we're going to go a little deeper into Sequencer. Is it just about the keyframe component of it? It's about the animation. I had some great office hours. Office hours were completely booked this week. It was fun. You guys did realize that like it was a keyframing exercise, and keyframing is an art. I always over keyframe when I first start, and then I have to start reducing things. Things get too wonky, too chaotic, and you realize less is more. So I'm glad a lot of people came to that realization. And I've spent a lot of time keyframing, so it makes sense to me. But it's something you just have to. It's like a craft. You have to spend time on it. So hopefully that was a good exercise for you. We're going to talk about introducing a character. So I already have some characters in here. We're just going to use them, and I've brought in a couple of assets. I have this little home gym that I've been using because it's only 14 megabytes. Anytime you get marketplace content, uh, let's see. Just so you know, it is marketplace. So I'll be using home gym. It's right here. It's $5 and it's 14 megabytes. You'll notice that it only goes to 4.26. So I actually created an empty 4.26 project to send it over there, and then I migrate it to my 5.0 project. So that's how you can get content that's older and bring it in. Assets like this, you'll never have a problem with it. Sometimes when it comes to blueprints and other things that are more technologically minded, then maybe you might have some version conflicts. But this is a really lightweight. We're going to use this gem. And then we also are going to use, and you'll notice when you get marketplace content, there's usually a like a showcase or a demonstration, or they'll show everything like in pieces. Right, this is the actual showcase of it, and a scene, and this is the pieces all laid out. Right, that's all how almost all marketplace assets will be. And then I also have this cave that I installed. It's a little bit bigger, but I've already let the shaders compile. And it was the free content from October of last year. Uh, this one, yeah, October 2021. So this is happy anniversary of a year of free content. You guys, I have it free if you want. I can give it to you. Anyway, this one was already for 5.0, so it's been installed. I've already let the shaders compile, so we can move on from there. I'm going to have a character that is going to be I like the idea of a Raging Bull. He's going to be a boxer, otherwise known as a pugilist, and he's going to be at the gym. He's going to be working out. We're going to, watch him do his workout and see whether he feels confident or not confident, and play around with some camera moves. We're going to get more into cinematics. All right. So it's really useful to have idle poses for characters. I don't even know what animations I have on my characters. Let's take a look and see what the status is of my project. So I have assets, skeletal meshes, test, test, test. Let's make sure my audio is working. And mouse is working great. Okay. Cool. And so I have looks like Ricky is not ready. We have Ralph and Bobby then. Is Ralph my Ready Player Me character? Yeah, we'll go for Ready Player Me character. All right, so my animations, let's see what I have. I have some swimming stuff and I have some beaches. So I want to get some idols and some uh punching and stuff like that. So we're gonna find our skeletal mesh, export it, asset actions, export, and then it looks like I already did it. And I usually keep it in a folder called imports, and that way I can keep on going back and forth to my character. So I don't need to export it because I've already set myself up from the previous week, but that's how I would do it if I hadn't. Instead of putting your downloads, we're going to get into version control soon. You want to keep things kind of tied to your project. So um, the quick way of finding my folder is just to say, show it in Explorer. It's going to put an Explorer window into my project. And then I can navigate up to the root folder and find my imports. So I think we said we wanted to do Ralphie. Yeah. So Mixamo, it is Obviously we could do mocap. Oh, in the syllabus, I've added a sign up sheet for doing mocap this Friday afternoon. If you would like to sign up, it's not limited to. It's just like we did before. It's completely visible. You can see who's signing up for what times. People can do mocap for each other. Somebody's already in a suit. But it's like a 4 hour block. Come and go whenever you want to. Sign up is right here at the bottom for this week. We also have there's a great little lesson in virtual cinematography if you want to get more into like depth of field and aperture settings, and that's also something you can take a look at for this week. All right, log in. So of course, we're using retargeting and motion builder and Mixamo, but of course you guys could be using motion builder or Blender with your motions, your custom bespoke motions. It's a different guy. I bet you I could probably put a Ready Player Me character onto a Ready Player Me character, but I'm not going to waste our time just in case. Here we go. Just the hair came through. That's interesting. That's an email. That's not a real bird. All right, so let's get some idols. Well, they're already idling. I want one that loops seamlessly. That's a happy idle. I guess our character might be happy. That was loud. Uh, I'm not going to cover sound yet, so you guys are more welcome to add sound in when you edit together in like Premiere or wherever you want to put together everything. Where's like standard idols? That's really crazy. I like that one. So doing without scan because we don't need to. We already have the mesh imported. They just say really say without mesh. Without skin sounds kind of like, grotesque. There we go. That looks nice. That's plenty for idols. And then let's do some boxing. There's a boxing idol. There you go. That's plenty. And then I want to get a walking cycle. I've already did my pre-production in my head, so I know which ones I want. You guys might want a storyboard or use that stable diffusion inside of Blender if you want to do some mood boarding and stuff and figure out things. So I'm gonna get myself a walk, but I know that I want to make it a confident walk, so we're gonna go for a catwalk. Nothing more confident than a catwalk. I do want to point out that when you're thinking about like parameters and things, that some of these characters have sassiness as on a slider. So just that's less sassy. Let's dial up that sassy. There's like hundreds of catwalks. Okay. We'll use it. That's like who wins a fight and then catwalks like that? That's super confident right there. All right, I think that's enough for me. We can always come back. It's loaded into Mixamo. We'll keep Mixamo tab open. We can just keep on bringing it in. So I'm gonna put it in my animations folder to be organized and just drag and drop it in. We all know that. We've done it plenty of times before. So let's go over to my downloads. Hopefully this doesn't take like 100 days. Let's just rename this one. Let's just give it a better name. Boxing 2. Cool. They're all going to go onto Ralph, and we don't want to bring in a mesh because we already have a mesh there, and everything else should be good. It might take a second because it includes fingers, which adds a lot of digits. Cool. Hopefully that's not screwed up. It looks like they're all sideways. That's not gonna be a big issue, but let's see which way. This is kind of like a mistake, and I don't know why I made this mistake, but I think this is worth solving. So you can take a look at rotations down here. These are my import settings. It says import rotation, and I could say, is it 90 degrees? And then you could say re-import. And there it is. So the idea is that you use the same asset through the entire project and you just keep on re-importing changes to it. That way it propagates through to all your levels. Not like, oh, I have a new hairdo on my character. I have to delete the character from everywhere. No, you just re-import the new character onto it and it brings in these new assets. So I know that now all of them have to just be 90. And we can do it as we go along. Let's make sure the scale is correct. Okay, scale looks fine. So 90. Same thing with, yeah. Look, all these transforms you just re-import. All right, but that's we'll see if we use them before we do. Well, actually, it's only two more, so there we go. And then jab cross, last one, and then we'll save, just because we know that we've seen things crash. Cool. So let's go back to our gym, and we want to go to save all. Let's go to the gym scene. So that's inside of home maps, and it is the showcase. I'm gonna copy and paste this into a. I'm gonna duplicate it and give it a name that's more meaningful for me. So I'm gonna go level gym, and we'll go and make sure we're in that one. All right, and then I know I'm in level gym because up at the top it says level gym. All right. So we're inside of this gray box. Not the coolest environment. For real quick sees until I have other maps loaded in. I want to be able to see the size of my room. So let's go to our mega scans and look at our surfaces, which are materials, and we have some concrete, and that gives us a little something better, right? It's already set up with lights. That's cool. We can bring in our own lights, and then we see there's a player start right here. So cool. I let's see. I think that our main character is going to be. I want to do it over here. So this is our player start. It's going to go away eventually, so I'm just going to get rid of it. If you've ever hit play in your sequencer and you have that little sphere where the player start used to be, just put it out of your way. You can also, in your level blueprint, I know we haven't done much with blueprints, hide that sphere. So this is my level blueprint. Just say event begin play, get player pawn, the pawn being the camera. Let's say set actor hidden in game. Yes, to being hidden. And this is a way to also get rid of that sphere. If you know what I mean. If you don't know what I mean, that's great. You've had a great experience. You're like, if you do know what I mean, you're like, why in the heck is there a sphere there? All right, so we're gonna bring in our character. I could just bring in the animation, but I'm not sure which animation I want to use yet. So I will I just have this on my other screen. I just have this guy going back and forth. It's gonna it's like what? Oh yeah. So let's get Ralph. Let's just bring in the skeletal mesh. We'll add in. Let's do it facing this way. So my idea is I want to do. We're gonna make this short. I want to do 3 shots. Right. I want to introduce Ralph abstractly. Right. I don't want to just start off with like, here's Ralph. Right. We want Ralph to enter the frame somehow or be revealed. Right. We want to look at something else first. So we're gonna start off looking around at these things, right? We see the gym, and we slow this down a little bit. This is my little camera speed. Move it down so I can kind of start framing it. And I think if he's in like the corner of our eye, that could be kind of cool, right? So it's not framing on him. We're not looking at him just yet, but it's going to add some curiousness. Not curiousness, but just not. We're not starting off with revealing everything. So there's a little trick that you hit this button right up here, and you say, "Create camera here, cinematic camera." And if I move away, look, there's a camera right there. All right. So I'm just blocking out shots. I know eventually we want to reveal him, right? Actually, I think the second shot's gonna be super close up, right? We're gonna get in these eyes that are pretty crazy, and we're gonna look in the eyes and see his determination to win, right? So let's create a camera right here, cinematic camera, and then what's another shot we could do? I think we got a dolly. No, it'll come to us eventually. All right, so we're gonna start with a sequencer, right? So level sequencer, folder for sequencers, assets. Yeah. All right, so this is going to be SEQ, and we'll just call this Jim. All right, and this is my first camera. Let's toss it in, and it automatically creates a camera cuts track, and we can see that both locking into both the things are seeing the same thing. There's only one camera there. Right now we're at 5 seconds. I know that I probably want to have this whole scene be maybe 15 seconds. So let's go ahead and make the whole thing 15. And then I'll have 3 5-second shots, something like that. How about that? All right. So in my frame, I don't like this tangent, right? This is like it's not showing the full weight. I definitely want to look at the weight first. So let's pilot this, right? So if I click in here, we'll see that it's piloting it. So it's moving it around. Let's start off on the weight. Actually, yeah, on the weight. Like that. So we're closer. Maybe we'll see. What I think I want to do is, are these all separate objects? All right, so these are all parented together. I'm going to move this and make it my own. So I'm going to, where's the root of it? Oh, it's already in there. Let's give ourselves something to look at. And we're going to do a focus pool. All right, we can also change between different buttons by saying W, E, and R. So W, E, R. I can drag between and pull it over. Cool. And now I have my framing has something a little more interesting in here, right? So I've kind of got him in a third, the dumbbells in a third, and then this guy's in the center. And what I want to do now is I want to start looking at focusing. I only want to focus on maybe the dumbbells. And then we're going to rack focus to just being looking at the weight itself, right? It can go either way, right? But I think that this framing is cool. And then we can look at the dumbbells. So I'm going to look at my camera components. Well, first we need to do, we'll look at the camera components and see that we have the most important things are focal length and aperture. I do have a presentation on camera stuff we'll do next week, getting into more of these technical things. Essentially, when your aperture, it means your eyes are wide open if it's low, And when your eyes are wide open, you can't see as much distance. You know, when like you're squinting, you can see further. Squinting is a high number in aperture, like a 12 or a 22, and everything's in focus. We want to have the lowest aperture because we want to have razor thin depth of field. And then if I come down to my focus settings and twirl it down, I could see that there's a focus distance, and then there's also a debug draw focus. If I click this and I start bringing it back in, it's like looking way out. You can see this is in centimeters. Come on, come on. There you go. This is actually what's focusing on, right? So I could tell exactly where I want to focus on, or I use a little dropper and I say, focus on that. And this is all, hi. And this is all keyframeable, right? So we're going to start off just looking at that. Oops, I think I went too far. Just looking at that. Bring it back in. Here we go. And then we'll keyframe it. Keyframe is right here. And I also want to keyframe my transform. I'm only moving up, so I just want to just do as few keyframes as possible. So let's do Z. And at the end of 5 seconds, I'm going to type in 5 seconds. I can also make it snap to the seconds. I'm going to bring up the camera. So let's bring it up right here. And then dropper, the point closest to us, bring it in. So as we scrub, it's going to, oh no! All right, well, we'll just skip to the next keyframe, put a keyframe for Z, and then come back to the beginning. And bring it back down. What I like about this is that we're looking far on the same plane as that character, but as we get closer to where we can actually see the character being revealed, it's going to tease you by making the character out of focus. So it's just going to be movement in the background, right? So that's a little mystery there playing with focus. What's one thing that people notice right now, though? Everything's in focus. Even though I said don't be everything in focus. All right, it's a little bit out of focus, right? But it's not, I want to make it like really exaggerated. We could try to bring down our aperture. You see that kind of does a little more. All right, so this is cool cinematic stuff. 1.2 is, that's a very expensive lens to do 1.2. So, but one thing to make sure, if you're not getting any focus depth of field, go to your engine scalability settings and make them cinematic. One of the things that focus is very hard for it to render, and when your computer's like chugging, it'll make the performance go down a little bit, so it'll make it less cinematic settings. So if I hit cinematic, it's like it's going to be the best it looks, right? So that's the first thing is if I can't get depth of field, cool. So one thing I noticed though is I want the foreground to be out of focus too. Here. So let's make it go a little further out. Oh, this way. There you go. So you can see the foreground's out of focus a little bit more as I bring it further out. What's the setting I want to change? Do this. Maybe I want to change this. No. Oh, that looks cool. All right, so focal length is how I can make it a more narrow, because you focus you have where it begins and where it ends with focus, and this is making a thinner plane of where things are in focus. So now with this, I think I can kind of frame it more like that. That's cool. So back to my focus settings. There we go. And then as it comes up, this slowly comes into focus. Isn't that cool? The framing isn't great, but we get the idea. We want to see the guy in the background. Nope. Right. Oops. Delete. Delete. All right. Something like this, right? There we go. You almost don't even notice, right? But right now, what we're missing is our characters aren't moving. And it makes it easier. That's why I got some idles because I like it when my character's moving because I get to see movement, right? That's one of the whole categories we're being trained on. So I like to bring in an idle, and I'm going to save all, and I'm going to go to my plugins. And this is something we had to do anyway. It was inevitable. We're going to be starting to get data into Unreal via motion capture live. So we're going to have to use a thing called Live Link. So might as well break it open now and say add Live Link. It's going to have to restart the engine to load the plugin in. And I know I want to work on this project for a little while. So I don't want to come back to this map if I have to restart again. Project settings, maps and modes, and then editor startup map. Every time the editor starts up, it's going to start up on LVL Gym now. So we can save ourselves 2 seconds. Gym. So we now have a sequencer in here. If I was being organized, I put my sequencers at the very top so I can find it, but I'm kind of running out of time right now. I haven't even done lighting. There's lighting, by the way, guys. We can't do everything. All right. So let's open up our sequencer, and everything's still there. Locked in. Cool. Focusable. So now that we have Live Link, it gives us the ability to live stream and motion capture data. And when we start making our live motion capture, we want to be able to see the performer even though we're not hitting the play button. I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to add a component to it, and that's called Live Link. Skeletal animation. And now if I go back to my skeletal component, I can add in an animation asset, and I'm going to look for idle. And I don't know which one. And now he's animating even though I haven't hit the play button. Or should be. That's okay. It's looping. Leave out enemy. Okay. I don't know why that one didn't loop. So now when I go back into framing, I have somebody there. All right, so I see a leg. But then when I can see his face, it's out of focus. All right, it's good to have motion. Something's in the background there. One thing that I was talking to somebody about is sometimes you don't want your character to have the same lighting as the environment, right? It's a little blown out right now. I can always bring down the brightness if I want to. But another thing that I was saying is sometimes skeletal meshes have to be animated, have to be lit in a different way. Sometimes like you want them to be more well-rounded so you could see them better. Sometimes you want them to be less well-rounded because you want them to be darker. And what you could do is if you look for the word channel, you have three lighting channels. You can say certain lights affect certain things and certain lights don't affect certain things, right? So this light I think is a little bit too bright for this character. I want to be in the shadows. So I want to say this light is on channel, let's say channel 0. How am I gonna do this? I want to be channel. I could take it off channel 0, and now it's not affecting our character. But if we go to our character now, let's say this light is only on channel 1, and our character can now receive light on 1 and 2, right? So you can link up different lights in different channels. That wasn't it wasn't bright enough to really make a huge difference. But I often have to like sometimes you want the environment to have a directional light, but that makes a too high of a contrast on a face, and you want to give a little touch up and like give a little bit more on the face for the character. So I guess the way to really do this would be to let's go back to channel. Let's make this light. That's fine. Let's add in a light because this isn't really lit well. All right, so let's add in light, little point light. Bring it over here. Just so you know, you can also crap. Where'd he go? You can also take lights or anything and pilot them too, and then you can place them where you want to. And so I can see now he's brighter, but I don't want I don't want the corner of the bill of the make sure you eject out. I don't want the corner to be that bright, so I will make this light channel 1, and then Ralph is channel 1 and 2. So he's receiving that light, but you see that we're still getting that shadow there, right? So that makes more sense to teach it that way, right? So super important because sometimes the direction lights are a little much. All right, so now he could see him really well. All right, let's do another take. We're gonna do a close-up, right? So we have this one. Let's load the camera. Let's get to frame 5, and we're gonna reveal the eyes of our character. Drag it in. And then now we're piloting it. That's actor 1, actor 2. Bring it down. All right, that's pretty cool. We also could parent it to the character, right? So I think we did that in a week 2 or something like that, where you just drag it onto the character, and all these things, these scenic things, I'm gonna put them in a folder to get rid of them. Scenic. Now I can see some more stuff. There's Ralph. I can take this camera and parent it to Ralph. I let go. It says which bone? Head, right? So now it's parented to the head, and as it moves around, we get the idea, right? So that could work. That way we could do a real cool oops, that was silly. Let's do that again. Ralph, head, cool. And then I'm just going to move it a little bit to the left. Oh, that was rotation. That's funny. That's an interesting look. I'm really striking out here. Let's eject. Double click on Ralph. There he is. Where's our camera? 0. There we go. That's fine. We're going to add it to the camera cuts. Now let's take a look in here. And we just want to look at Ralph himself. So we will bring down the focus, focus, zoom in. Zoom. Let's see. Lines. Let's do it like that. On the nose. Wow, that's cool. It's almost like on his knuckles only. There you go. Yeah. All right. There's also a cool thing where you can tell what to look at. In fact, we'll do that next. All right. So then we're going to eject out. And let's just do a dolly for the heck of it. So we didn't look at it before, but if we go here, you have cinematic stuff, and you actually have a crane for real. So you can put a camera at the end of the crane and move the crane around, do crane shots. All right, so the crane has a pitch and a yaw, so you get really cinematic shots that way. And you can parent the camera so it always points at our character. I'm going to do a dolly though. It's a little easier. So let's go to cinematic dolly, bring it over, bring it over. And then we take a camera and we take the camera and we put it on the rail, zero the camera out, and there it is on the rail. We tell the camera itself to always look at Ralph. Did you do it? So now, uh, let's make this track a little bit longer. We can also rotate it if we want to, move it back a little bit. And we're going to dolly in on Ralph. So, enable look at tracking, watch it, pop. All right, so he's looking at the origin. He's looking at 000 on Ralph. And, Ralph's like, eyes up here, buddy, eyes up here. So we're going to offset it a little bit so that he's always looking up. And what's cool about this is I go back to my dolly. As I go in, he's going to continue to look up. All right. So let's go ahead and add this to a keyframe. Actually, we need to go to frame 10. We're going to add this as a keyframe, and then we're going to add the camera offset as a keyframe. And then we're going to go to 15 seconds. And then let's go ahead and go back to the rail is just between 0 and 1. So when you get to 1, you're at the very end keyframe. And then go back to our camera. And then make sure that we're still looking up at Ralph. Right? And then I was going to do some more stuff with animation, but we're running out of time, like make him do a victory thing, right? He's successful and he's powerful, right? This is looking up. It's called a hero shot. You're looking up at the hero, right? So he's victorious. We're also going to get our focus, add that to here, make sure that he's in focus. Oops. I'm going to put on this little debug plane so I can see when he's at the nose. Here we go. In focus. Here. But then when it's back here at 10 seconds, we want to be in focus back here. There you go. Now we turn that off. Cool. So I'm happy with the scene. Let's go ahead and review it. We got a focus pull. Ralphie's out of focus. Now we're getting in there. We see who he is. And then he knocks something over or whatever. And, oh, I need to add in that other camera. So let's go back to 10 seconds. Go back to our, 10 seconds. Go back to our camera cuts and add in the next camera. All right, if I hold down G, I get rid of game objects. So there's our first scene. Pretty cool, right? Start making movies in Unreal. So I'm going to save, and I have this other map. So let's go to the other map. I'm going to go to Content Browser, and it was underneath Cave. And what was it? Overview. So you saw in the cameras, obviously, there's tons and tons of settings. So that's why I included in the syllabus the lesson for the online learning portal where you get more to cinematics. So this cave, what I want is for our character to triumphantly leave the gym, right? This is this really cool gym. Like I've seen this place, it's over in like Gowanus, right? And our character of Ralphie, actually what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rename this one something meaningful to me, duplicate it and call it LVL exterior. I'll make sure we go into that one. And I'll make this real quick because we got to move on. So Ralph, I'm not even worried about bringing in the skeleton mesh. I'm just going to bring in our catwalk. I need to make sure that it's oriented correctly. I'm not blending animation, so I could just rotate it inside of the sequencer, but I'm just going to do it correctly because I have people watching me. No, that's not as. There we go. That's the one. Okay. There we go. So, Ralph, wow, this is a huge scene. Look at all that dust. We're gonna add in. Maybe I don't want to put on the animation just yet because it'll get in the way because it moves so much. In fact, I think that's correct. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open up the sequencer, add a little sequencer, assets, little sequences, SEQ, and this one is SEQ exterior. Let's add in, again, tons and tons of stuff that I'm not gonna mess around with. I'm just gonna put it into a folder to get rid of it. Stuff. And now I have the thing I want, which is this. Catwalk, bring it in, and we have a 5-second animation of catwalk walk. There he goes. Cool. I actually don't mind the camera being here, so I'm going to create a camera here. And then I love how he walks just past it. Maybe I want to go. Actually, I didn't have to do that. Let me show you the smarter thing to do. Is just hit the camera here. There you go. So he's just gonna walk right by it. Great. And then I am going to make it a little more interesting. I'm going to keyframe the transform. But at the beginning, I want, that's the wrong way. I want to be looking at like the exterior. Cool. So it's going to come down. I'm going to move forward a little bit because I want to be able to see more of Ralphie. There we go. So comes, that's a little extreme. There we go. And I like the idea of Ralphie being in focus. Beautiful. Make sure that's keyframed. And then when it's up, I want that to be in focus. Amazing. So we can always export it out and then put it together later. But let's actually talk about level sequences real quick, or sub levels and streaming levels. So if I open up our good old content examples, what I'm going to show you is that you can actually have multiple levels at the same time in Unreal. If I go back to our style guide, UE4 style guide, you can see when you get down to the levels for the naming conventions, there's something called a persistent level, and that's a level that never goes away. That's a level that's on top, and then you can have other levels underneath it that turn off and on. In previous version or Unreal 4, you can only have one person check out a map at a time, and so you'd have the audio person have the audio level, and the geometry person have the geometry level, and everyone would have their own levels, so they can each check out and continue to work in the level, and would propagate, change would propagate through to the persistent. Now you have this thing that I haven't figured out yet called rule partition grid, where everyone can work on small chunks of the same map. I haven't really gotten into that just yet, but this is the old school way. It's still relevant, it's still part of the content example, so we'll examine that. We'll maybe get in the rule partition grid for the second half of the semester. But all I need to do is create another map that's blank. Let's go to maps and call this one main P for persistent, or P underscore main. Depends on what we want. And let's open it up. So there's a new window we're going to open up in our interface, and it's called the Levels tab. I already have it open because I was playing around with this earlier. I docked it over here, and we see, yes, we have a persistent level. And we can have a list of levels here if we wanted. And content examples will be the way we're going to show it. So I'm going to say open level and look for level streaming. So I want you to look at this list of levels. This map has a bunch of different levels, right? Right now you can see them all, but they could be turned off dynamically too. So that you're not rendering geometry you're not looking at. As I walk down the hallway, I'm going to turn off things behind me so I can make my things more performant, right? So you can have them all stacked on top of each other so other people can work in different parts of the map, or you can have them sequential so you're turning them off and on. But if I hit play, you can see that only this one level is on. And then as I walk down the hallway, this is using trigger boxes, it turns them on, right? And when I get far enough away, it's going to start turning them off. Oops. Camera's going crazy. There we go. So it starts turning them off behind me. I had issues there for a second. All right. So just letting you know that that's how you get multiple levels at the same time. We will close this. So our persistent, we're going to add 2 levels. We have our maps inside of assets, maps, and we have, oh, actually, no, we have them. We have gym and exterior. And now they're on top of each other, right? The gym and the map, they're both at like 0, 0, 0. I know the first one is 15 seconds, the next one is 5 seconds. So let's make a new level sequencer. That's technically going to be our master sequencer. And call this one seek main. Cool. And then we have a track. I'm going to make this thing 20 seconds long. And then we're going to add in a thing called a level visibility track. There you go. And we're going to have one for LVL gym. Did I misspell that? That's fine. And then we're going to have another one for LVL exterior. And at 5 seconds, or 15 seconds, we're going to splice them, edit, split, edit, split, and then we're going to turn off the gym, hidden, and then here we're going to turn off the cave. So we scrub, boop. Cool. This can all be done via blueprints. And this is where you want to make sure that you don't have like your auto exposure on, your auto adaptation, because you'll see how it's like, you see how that level doesn't have exposure locked in, and it's going to adapt. So both levels look like they need post-processing. I'm not worried about that now because we did that in previous tutorials. So how do we choose our camera? That's called a shots track. A shots track is how you choose what sublevel you want to use in the camera. There's also a thing called a subscenes track. If you ever want to have animation that's nested but doesn't have a camera in it, use a subscene. If it's another level sequence that has a camera, use a shots track. 2 different ways of doing it. As you use them, you'll see the different behaviors of them. But for us right now, we're just using. So when you do a big project, you usually start off with a persistent sequencer that is your persistent level has basically just the camera in it, but maybe not even just the camera in it. And it's usually empty and it just holds all the sequencers. And then it has a shots track. You go in the shots track, and each of the shots tracks then have a sub-sequencer track. So you usually have 3 layers of a hierarchy of sequencers on large projects, like things that are like like that music video that we watched with the Sunset Drive. I'm just gonna use a shots track because this isn't that long of a project. I already added in. So you just choose a sequence you want to do it first. So our first one is gym. And then we go to 15 seconds. And we add in exterior. So now we lock it in. Boom. There's our movie. All right. Save all. And if you want to do audio here, if you want to do like, so you see there's different levels, and it's like the more you use it, the more you get familiar with why you need to put things in certain places. And again, don't be worried if you realize, oh, I do it completely different. You always want to do it completely different when you do it the next time. So the last thing we need to do is we need to render. Obviously, there's this giant render thing right here. Yeah. I don't know if they have crossfades. You might have to render them out individually and do that in like Premiere. And audio is probably easier to do in Premiere as well because it's 2D. I mean, if you're doing spatialized audio for VR, you definitely want to do it in the game engine. I think that, let me just see if I can overlap it. No, it won't even, well, I know it's something that people ask for, and we're at 5, but 5.1 came out, so maybe it's going to happen soon. But you imagine it would be very performance heavy if you're trying to do it real time because you're rendering two scenes at the same time, right? But we're not doing it in real time. We're using this as an asynchronous renderer that does it really fast. So this is the old movie render queue. It's not the greatest. It doesn't do things like sync audio. It doesn't have a lot of settings to it. That's the old way. There's got to be a better way. There is, and it's called Advanced Render Queue. And that's the last thing I'm going to talk about today. Um, it is not there by default. It's another plugin. So I'm going to make sure I save all. And then edit plugins, render queue, movie queue. I don't know if I need additional passes, but I'll put it in anyway. Restart. And this gives us the ability to do like an audio, do multiple passes. You can basically, it can also be like a render farm. You can render out a bunch of different levels. The previous way would only render out the active sequencer. This way I could stack tons of different maps. I can have different settings for each one. Of course, more features means more things to learn, but it is straightforward just to get started. So it'll reload, and by default, it's going to open up into the gym map first because that's what we said was our default. Right, so there's gym. Maybe we're going to go into main. And then let's go ahead and now enter window, cinematics. We should have movie render queue. What are we going to render? You're going to render out main, which is going to render out the other ones underneath it. There's all 4 cameras that it's going to render out, right? So that is fine. That's the job. What is our configuration? How do you want to render it? Well, I don't want to do a JPEG. I want to do PNG, which is a little bit nicer. If I wanted to do color correction, I would do an EXR, which has high density resolution. You can do audio files. You can render out or export out an EDL as edit decision list to bring into Final Cut or Premiere. So bring in all your stuff. So there's tons of settings. I have the link in the syllabus to 2 different tutorials on how to go really far deep into this. But just to get it going on, and you guys should know how to do PNG sequences to movies. You can just use QuickTime or use Adobe Premiere, Adobe Render Queue. When you say where do we want to put it, I'm gonna put it in my download so I can find it easily. My desktop, whatever. That's fine because I cleaned off my desktop at the beginning of the semester. HD, I can go 4K. Right? It's rendering asynchronously. You can make it. I don't think it does 8K yet, but I think it goes over 4K. Do I want to use a custom frame rate? Right now, my default is 30. I can make it a custom frame rate. And do I want to spin up? All this kind of stuff. Everything's fine as long as I choose a folder. And if I want to save this as a preset because I want to come back and use it again a bunch of times, I can always save it as a preset. And then I keep on, like if you're doing a bunch of renders and you're doing a project, save presets. I'm going to say accept. And then, yes, it's going to my downloads. That's fine. One thing I didn't add in that I do want to add in is I want to put an anti-aliasing. It's going to make it look a lot nicer. We're going to do temporal anti-aliasing. So we want to do like basically every frame, we want to do 8 passes. And I want to make sure I'm overriding my anti-aliasing. So this is my own setting. There's like a project setting. I'm overdoing it. And then what method am I going to use? I'll do default. That's good enough right now. Again, there's a tutorial for going really deep into this. And then you can render it locally, or you can actually create a render farm and render it remotely. Do it locally, it's going to open up. And once it's initialized, you'll see that it's doing 8 subsamples per frame. And we're at frame 13, we're at frame 14, and there it's going. So it's spitting out in my download. Oh man, it's spitting out in my root download folder tons and tons of PNGs. I cancel that. and go look at the mess I just made. Yeah, look what I just did my downloads. But there you go. Cool. Surrendering it out. I know that was long. It was longer than I thought it was going to be, but I was going through everything. Um, I did everything I wanted to do. That's cool. So let's get started. Start thinking about your characters. Let's go ahead and think about your map. You're welcome to use anything, go anywhere in the world you want to on this one. You don't have to stick with starter content anymore. You're definitely going to start your